Well, welcome to this week's live stream, and this is called Developing Managers or Develop Managers. So very much welcome to you wherever you're dialing in from around the world. This is a multi-platform stream, as we say, which is a fancy word for lots of different places. So however you've arrived here at this live stream this week, thank you very much for being here with us. We're just going to give a few moments for people to get in, get comfortable, get settled. If you've never been to one of the live streams that we host before, my name is Wayne Clark from the World Class Manager team, and I'm here in an unusually bright, sunny, blue-skied London, which is very strange. I can even show you, look out the window. Look at that. We've got some cranes in the distance, but as the camera adjusts, you'll see we've got a bit of blue sky, which is, I've got to show it off because it's not usual if you know the UK. So welcome to the live stream this week. And as we often say, this is a very relaxed affair. The whole idea here is to give sort of us as a community an opportunity to engage, to share knowledge, best practice and learning. And also as an organization, if you don't know anything about us and about myself, I spend much of my time on the road working with lots and lots of different organizations, and we do as a global team. We've worked now with over 1,000 organizations around the world focused on this issue of developing line management capability. And the live stream for us is a great way to be able to share in a more rich environment, I guess, some of our research, some of our insights, some of the best practices and learnings and so on. Nothing is scripted. I've got some visual aids which help us to go through this, but the whole idea is it's something very relaxed and we can share insights and best practices. Also, a huge element of this is your interaction and your involvement too. So if you do have questions as we go through this, please do feel free to pose them in the chat box or whatever chat box you've got access to, and we'll try and pick some of those up later on in the session as well. Also, if you've got any thoughts, any comments in terms of things that you think are working really well for your organization, then again, please do let us know. And if there are things that you think, you are doing really well that you would love to share with others, again, that's really useful also for the rest of the community. I guarantee that we've all pretty much got the same challenges in pretty much most of our organizations, pretty much most of the time. And I say this with confidence because we've had an opportunity now to work with thousands and thousands of managers around the world. And what we see are constant themes. We see the same challenges, whether we're in Vietnam or Morocco or Brazil or Australia or Canada and on and on. The challenges in organizations and for managers tends to be largely the same. So we're talking about very shared pain points and shared issues. And what we wanted to do today was look at this from two very different perspectives, which we'll get into in a moment. Before we do that, I would love a bit of a shout out. So wherever you are in the world, whatever organization you're from, please feel free to shout out, put it in the chat, share with the group that we've got in the session today, where you're from, maybe what your focus is, what your commitment is, what your challenge is. Please feel free to post that and we'll get cracking. So these live streams, as I said, are our way to be able to share with you best practices that we're picking up from working with companies kind of everywhere. A huge element of this is looking at the distillation, if I can say the word. It's the distillation in a way of the how-to. It's the so what. It's what we spend and what I spend much of my time on, trying to get to the crux of what is it that we can do. Yes, we know that these are issues. We've all debated these for time, forever, but what can we do that will make an impact? We created a program called the World Class Manager Program, which was essentially based on observing best practice in organizations and with managers around the world. We began our work in a way all the way over in New Zealand, all the way through to Vancouver in Canada, interviewing CEOs, HR directors, frontline managers, and asking a very simple question, which we like simple, naive questions, is what is it that a world-class manager does? And we built a whole program based on that. So that's where everything comes from, all of our context, all of our research. Obviously, I'm tremendously biased because we look at the world through this lens of having highly capable, great managers, or in our language, we call it world-class managers. So again, everything here is focused on building the capability of managers, which again, may interest you from various different angles. It may be that you're a consultant working with organizations, and hopefully we can provide you with some more insights and best practice, some tools and some data. It may be that you're a HR director or a CEO where you've got a huge responsibility to develop the capability of managers within your teams. And again, there's going to be a lot of value here in terms of how we position and talk about some of these insights. And it could be that you're a manager and you manage a very small team. And you're thinking to yourself, how do I do it? I mean, this is quite complex, quite difficult stuff in some cases. How do I get the very best from the team? It might even be that you're yet to become a manager one day, in which case we say, like, why would you do that? It's an insane thing to do, managing people, because we're so irrational as human beings. But of course, I'm joking. This is all about helping you to become as strong as possible. And ultimately, and we're going to come back to this, how do we help you to build your value? So in terms of my background and experience, super quick, I spent about 11, 12 years in professional service firms. I trained as an economist originally, went to work for Arthur Andersen, and then Deloitte as it was, then BDO. Then I spent about 5 years looking at data, employee engagement data, and feeding that back to CEOs of lots and lots of different companies. And then in 2012, we started this organization, the World Class Manager Team, and we are now present in about 7 countries in terms of with a team. And then also in terms of our work, it's more than 50 countries. I'm not sure exactly the number, but it's a lot. And we work consistently around the world, focused on building line management capability. It's everything that we do, and all of our research has come from that. So in terms of our, I guess, the insights, where it's come from here, oh, look, we've got Preston represented. I've just seen this on the screen. South Africa, I saw as well. London Borough, Hammersmith and Fulham, very close to my heart. It's where my family are from. In terms of our global insights and research, as I said, we've picked this up from working with managers everywhere. And what we've now got an opportunity to do is to delve into that data and look at what we found out from working with over 100,000 managers in more than 50 countries around the world. So everything that we're sharing with you is based from evidence, and it's based on what we've seen consistently. We took those insights, and you may have heard my story before if we've connected before on LinkedIn, but we launched a book last year published by Kogan Page called How to Become a World-Class Manager, funnily enough, based on our research, based on the insights. And again, we tried to break down in the book in a succinct way as possible much of our global learnings and insights of working with different organizations and so on. However, this is all about developing managers today. And what I wanted to do in these series of live streams, and if you've been to any of them over the last couple of months, we try to zero in on a particular issue. As I said, none of this is scripted. Actually, like, these are my notes. Look at that. That's as many notes as I've got. These are unscripted. They provide a real opportunity for us to engage with you to engage with us, and also the community, and also to share insights around what works. This topic around how do we develop managers is a big one, because I should remove this because I can't see you. You probably can't see me. When we look at this developing managers challenge, what we consistently see are organizations who are in a way making the same mistakes time and time again. And often there are things that we've seen that we think, you know what, that should be replicated. That is absolutely brilliant. That is best practice. And it doesn't matter what culture, what background, what country we're in, those things tend to work. We've also seen the opposite side, as I'm sure you have, which are things which you think, that doesn't work. And I don't know why they're going to do that. I can already see that they're going to make the same mistake that we've seen 20 other companies make. You try and give advice as best you can, but of course, people must experiment for themselves. But hopefully what we're going to share with you in this live stream is going to help you to, in a way, accelerate the impact of whatever it is that you're working on, whether or not that's as an organization or whether or not that's as an individual as well. And as I said, I wanted to look at this from 2 very different sort of angles in a way. Partly based on the organization. So you may be thinking about this saying, you know, we've got an organization where we want to build the line management capability, or it could be as an individual that you want to build your own line management capability. And again, I'm going to talk about 3 things for each of these. As you will hopefully know if you've interacted with us before, everything is very much solution focused. I don't like airy-fairy stuff. So this is all about things that we've seen that work. And these are ideas and principles based on things that we've seen that either work or don't work. And therefore we shouldn't be replicating them. So as we go through, again, please feel free to jump in. Anything that you've seen that works really well, please feel free to share that with the rest of the group. And we'll try and pick that up as we get into this a bit further. So 3 things I wanted to talk about. Let's start with the organization in mind. 3 key things. And I sort of focused them around what I would call like miss things, not like Mr. and Mrs. or Master and Miss. You know, you'll see what I mean when I share these. But 3 things which I think the organization is challenged with, which I wanted to just unpack a little bit in terms of the challenges. And then we'll get to the flip side of this, the mirror image, which is in terms of the solution and things that we see that work really, really well. The first thing that I would say when we look at this, and I'm just going to remove this just before we get into this. I didn't also mention, you can tell this is live, right? I didn't also mention that we're going to have a giveaway today. We don't usually do giveaways on this live stream. And I'm not a live streamer by day job. This is not what I do all day long. I'm very busy, like you are, advising companies. We work with lots and lots of different organizations around the world, but we thought this was a really good way to share some of our insights and learnings. And one of the things that we do on our World Class Manager program is for managers who complete the program sometimes, and we do this in conjunction with companies, is they get awarded this wonderful, we call it the Managerial Cup of Excellence, and it's a gold World-Class Manager mug, and we're going to be giving away one of those in this live stream. I know, contain yourselves, it's insane. It's an insane giveaway for a Wednesday morning, but we're going to be doing this, so bear with us, and we'll get to that as we get through this as well. But when we talk about this topic of developing managers, I like to start with the big why. As always, great question to ask, and it sounds like a very simple, naive question to ask, right? Why would you want to develop managers? Like, sounds obvious. But it's not necessarily obvious, because we go to some organizations where they have nothing in place, and it actually seems like a revelation that they should be focused on developing managers. Some organizations on the other side are also spending tons of time, energy, and lots of money to develop managers, which often can be done in the wrong way. And what we're asking often CEOs to really sit back and think about. So if you are a CEO, or if you have a significant influence on the organization, then I think this is a really valid question to ask, which is, why would you want to develop managers? What's the purpose of doing this in the first place? Your answer might be that it's something to do with improving the employee experience, because surely we know if we've got better managers, then we know that people leave managers, not the company. I think that's pretty true, and we've covered that at length in previous live streams. But we know that if we can improve the capability and quality of line management, people management, it tends to be that people will enjoy the organization a bit more likely to stay, more likely to give of themselves a bit more for the organization. So this could be a focus of looking at the employee experience. Again, another why could be that you're sort of laser focused on delivering for your customers or whoever the organization serves. You could be a tremendously commercial organization, which, let's face it, your focus might be on delivering exceptional customer or client service, as I'd experienced in my formative years in corporate world in professional service firms. Or it might be that you're in you could be a healthcare organization, a hospital, you could be a housing association, you could be a manufacturing company. We all serve someone, and ultimately, we probably want to have a stronger organizational management capability to deliver for the very people the organization was set up in the first place to deliver for. Again, it could be a hospital, it could be a manufacturing company, it could be a law firm, doesn't really matter. We all serve someone. And then the third area of looking at this is this could be about delivering for a stakeholder. It could be an investor, it could be a regulator, it could be someone who's got a significant influence in terms of the industry. Again, there are always these sort of big external stakeholder relationships that we manage, and complex ones sometimes as an organization. And therefore, maybe the goal of improving management quality or management capability is to improve those key stakeholder relationships. So whichever way you're arriving at this, neither one of those is correct or incorrect. They're all, in a way, what should be right for your organization at the right time. And herein, I think, is one of the initial challenges here, right? Often what happened in many organizations is the role of the manager, if you think about it, has often developed to become what it has been because it survived in a way through the jungle, right? So the role of the manager has often never been designed from scratch. If you think about the current role of most managers in most organizations, the organizations evolve over time because we have to survive, we have to compete, we have difficult shocks that hit the organization, and therefore it's quite an organic way that the role of the manager has naturally evolved. Again, not right, not wrong. What we often ask CEOs is to say, look, if you could restart this organization from scratch, would the role of the manager going forward be what it's currently today? And it's an interesting debate we often have with CEOs, because many would say, no, actually, if we could design the organization from scratch, and given everything that happens in our insane world all the time, if you had a blank sheet of paper and said over the next 2 to 3 years, if we could redesign the role of the manager, this is what it should be, I suspect it would look different to how it currently is for many managers. Managers would rejoice, teams would probably rejoice, and the people you serve would probably rejoice too. The challenge is that often we don't get an opportunity and time to really sit and rethink what the whole role of the manager is in the organization, which is why I start with this, because when we think about what the role of the manager is, and when we think about why would we even want to develop managers, I do think it's a really fundamentally important question to ask, to debate, to ponder, whichever word we use, certainly with any group of leaders in the organization, because if we nail that question, it helps to solve everything I'm probably about to talk about here, which I think are symptoms or symptomatic of no clarity around what the role of the manager is and why we would need to develop the managers. Sounds like a conundrum, sounds like it as I'm talking about it, but hopefully this will make much more sense as we're going through. So first thing I wanted to talk about is what we call misalignment, right? This is what I would call misaligned. So many development programs for managers we see in organizations all around the world. I'm currently in London in the UK, but this is not specific to the UK at all. This is a global phenomenon or challenge or issue. Is many development programs for managers are what I would call misaligned. And when I talk about misaligned is that they're not lined up with what the goal, the mission, the vision, strategy, the values, all that stuff that sits at the organizational level that most CEOs and leadership teams think is a good thing. And it largely is. It's rare that we come across an organizational vision, mission, set of values, strategy, goal, objectives, and we say that is horrific. That's awful. That's never, people are going to hate that. It's never that. It's more the case that people just don't understand it and we can't get it through. Having this locked into the design of a management development program, whichever way you take it, I think is a really fundamentally important area. So what we often see is that the organizational mission, vision, and all of that stuff is not baked into the structure and the design of the development program for managers. At high level, at senior level, most HR directors, most chief people officers, most senior people actually would believe that it is. In truth, I think it actually is. When I debate this stuff with senior people, it really is. The challenge is when you get 3 or 4 levels below and you get geographically, a few hundred or a few thousand miles from the center of the organization or where the decision making happens, often the clarity is gone. And it doesn't feel like what it began to feel like or how it was originally designed in the first place. So we talk about being misaligned, right? Which gives us a clue in a way to what the solution might be here. The second thing is what I would call missold. So this is where the organization often does quite a poor job of engaging with managers to sell the benefits of why they should bother. Now, you may argue, well, it's obvious, isn't it? The organization is putting on a management development program. Surely everyone would be well fired up to develop themselves and sharpen their skills. Absolutely not the case. And I would say, and this sounds like a bad number, and you can check it back in many of the polls that I run and we run on LinkedIn, is I would argue around about between 10 to 15% of any population are the population who are really naturally fired up to complete any sort of training and development program which is offered by the organization, world-class manager included. Shocking, I know, but true. And this is not to do with the quality of programs per se, although of course that can have a variance and an impact on that. But it's more about the fact that most people aren't clear to begin with in terms of what their own career development looks like. And we'll come to some stats that I wanted to share with you, world exclusive stat actually that we never shared before from our World-Class Manager program, which tells us something quite interesting about why this might be the case. And I think it's more of an interpersonal human issue rather than anything that the organization is doing wrong or really sort of not doing correctly. And then the third thing that we're going to talk about, so second point here is, it's often missold. We're not engaging with managers in the right way to set up the ultimate whiff-in factor, right? Which is what's in it for me, which sounds obvious because the organization is essentially helping you to build your skills and build your capability, but often it's not seen like that. And the reason why is because we are so busy. Now, remember, you are there minding your own business, happily doing your work, of which your workload, I'm sure, is never getting less. It's not like you're looking at your inbox or your calendar and saying, oh, it's looking a lot easier over the next few months. I'm getting a lot less emails now, and I've got a lot less invites to meetings, and there's a lot less projects I need to work on. This is never, ever the case. You are minding your own business, getting on with your busy day job, and then up pops an invite. You're going to be invited to go on this management training program. Really? What? Huh? What's all this about? Remember, about 4 conversations before you got that message, there was this wonderful interaction between the leadership team and the chief people officer and the HR team. And it all made so much sense of why this was aligned to the vision, mission, principles, values, objectives, goals of the organization. By the time it hits you, it often doesn't appear like that. And it just feels like more stuff to do on top of a really busy day job, right? So we must understand and empathize with where managers are at in order to get them to engage in the first place. And I think this is where the majority of programs really fall apart before they've even begun, which is the engagement with managers at the beginning. And the final one is what I would call that managers are often misserved. We've learned this in a way through our own data and our own interactions, we began in 2016 with World Class Manager as a fully virtual program. Of course, 2020 hit, which was in a way not really a big deal for us because we were virtual anyway, but we've certainly found the demand for more coach supported, the more blended learning options, which of course we reacted and now offer, really exponentially grew. And it tells us not necessarily that people just want that, they want it for a reason, because it provides a mechanism for people to feel like they've got a bit more of a mentor coaching relationship as they've gone through these things. Now that can be handled by an external person, and I think it's more valuable often, not trying to do ourselves out of business, but I think this is better handled by internal people. The challenge is, how do we identify the people who are really good at this anyway? And if we can identify those people, could we put them to work a little bit more in a smart way here by maybe lessening their other workloads, but in a way employ their skills and experience and their interest in helping to coach and develop other people? There's a huge organization we work with. I won't name them because it's kind of private, but they put out an advert internally for who wanted to retrain as a coach. So if you really enjoy coaching people, they had 60 people go through this program where they developed their own internal coaches. I think it's been a fantastic success. And the organization has its own internal capability to deliver that more blended learning option. But I think the third area is what I would call misserved. It's not necessarily just about coaching. This is more about how does the organization in a way support the manager, given all of the challenges we've spoken about before in previous live streams, with workloads, with pressures, with team challenges and all of those things, and their own development issues, and in a way help to support the managers through what can often be quite a difficult process in terms of the demands on their time. So 3 key things which I think are really important to watch out for, and we see these coming up time and time again. Again, flicking now to the solution on these, well, it's very obvious, isn't it? If we are misaligned, then the challenge here is how do we better align managers? And here is something really important. Let's suppose in the World Class Manager program, we have 27 modules that constitute our entire program. Let's make that easier. Let's imagine it's 10. There are 10 big things that we get managers to focus on as we go through the program. Let's suppose, actually, one of them is what we would call in our language, great goal setting. So module 2 of our program is called great goal setting. Wouldn't it be smart if before managers went through the great goal setting module, that someone senior from the organization contextualized what that module means in the context of the vision, the strategy, the mission, and all that stuff? And this is the same for every single part or component of any development program. There is an opportunity, especially now that everything is digital, that we can contextualize all of these key strategic pieces of information in a way that makes the management development program just make sense. Otherwise, I get asked to go and attend this session on how to set great goals with the team, and it kind of makes sense. I can see these people talking to me. I'm following the stuff online. I'm clicking the quizzes. I'm reading the workbook. I've kind of got it. But it makes so much more sense, because otherwise it's an abstract construct in a way of something that's relevant and interesting, but it's not that relevant and it's not super local to the organization. So again, what we found here is you could take and my tip would be take every single constituent part of your development program and ensure that each part of that is aligned to something on the macro level for the organization. The challenge you may face is maybe there isn't anything to align it with. So again, it's not every organization who has this unbelievable clarity in terms of vision, mission, principles, and all that stuff. But if you do have it, then I think it's a really valuable exercise to do it. Who should do it? Your CEO, your leadership team, people in significant roles. What we ask them to do as we work with them on our program is we will ask a CEO or a CFO or a chief people officer to get a camera and take a 30-second video, real simple, doesn't need an editing team to do it, doesn't cost a penny, but to contextualize why that particular module is important. We had a huge insurance company who put their managers through our program, and we had the CEO say, look, I've got 2 parts of our European operation on my back, and this is literally his video. They're putting demands on me. I have to grow this business by 3% next year. So when you have your next one-to-ones with your team, I would really appreciate it if you zeroed in on X, Y, Z. I mean, I don't know how long that took. That was like, 8-9 seconds, right? The video was about 30 seconds in total, but it just made you feel like, I've got it. Makes so much sense. And of course, if I can, as a manager, deliver a better valuable experience or better output for the organization, of course, the organization wins, but importantly, as a manager, I win. So this isn't just about helping the organization to win here. This is also about managers too. Interestingly, first data point, 42% of managers that we've surveyed, and this is based on 15,500 managers who've been through our program, do not know what the goal of the organization is. You say, what? 42% of managers we've surveyed, based on 15,500 managers who've been through our program, do not know what the goal of the organization is, right? I mean, this is a compelling statistic, I think, because again, imagine you are the CEO, you've got your 100 best managers in the room. And let me tell you, by the way, this doesn't matter whether we're talking about the most senior 100 or whether we're talking about the most junior 100. It tends to be the case. There are a tremendous number of people who have no idea of what this is all about, because the mechanism of often sharing the information with them was done in a mechanistic way. It was done in a delivery broadcast mechanism, and therefore people have not had an opportunity to really think this through. Again, we've zeroed in on this in depth in previous live streams, but maybe this actually needs its own one, maybe for the future. I think this is a really big statistic. Second big thing here is, how do we sell the idea of going through a management development program? How would you do that? Now, I think to begin with, we've got to, like any great customer delivery organization would do, we've got to understand the customer. We've got to do, obviously we don't have the AI tools that an Amazon would have, but I'd heard this statistic that the volume, well, it's a qualitative statement, I guess more, but the volume of data that Amazon know about each of us is probably, they know more about us than a psychiatrist would, because of their intelligence of being able to sort of aggregate all of this data, triangulate it all, use AI in the mix, and it tells you a lot about the patterns of behavior of human beings, right? But I guess Amazon might be an exceptional organization to talk about in terms of how it understands its customer, but we kind of need to apply the same logic here, that we've got to understand where managers are coming from. If you walked a week in the life of your average manager, actually don't even make it your average manager, why don't you pick 10 or 20 managers and just get them to talk through what a week or a month in their life looks like. And it really starts to help you to understand how best do we set this thing up. Because often some of the gripes and concerns and challenges that come back in an employee survey or a colleague survey or an employee experience survey tell you so much about how to set up and language and launch what we would call a management development program in a way that when it hits me as the frontline manager with a very busy diary and a very busy team, it feels like this is valuable to me. This is going to be great. This is going to give me something rather than just take more of my time and energy away. So how we sell and set this up with managers is really important. A clue here is, of course, looking at the life, a week or a month in the life of a group of managers, like a test case, and say, how do we set this up in a way that feels like it's going to be really value adding? And the final one we talk about is, how do we then best serve and support managers, of which, of course, the second one should give us some really good insight. And again, I would look over a sort of 6 to 12 month plan of action and say, right, how do we put in place the supporting sort of tools that are necessary in order to help managers to win? Now, you may be, listening to me thinking about this from the perspective of, okay, this is doable, because you've got a tremendous amount of resource, or you've got a very highly capable internal OD, L&D, HR team who can really run with this, and maybe already are. You may be also listening to this from a smaller organization, or from an organization who is more resource constrained, in which case you don't have some of those resources. And how can this be done? Well, it can definitely be done. And maybe here's a way in to try and solve this too. I guarantee that in every single population of managers, even if you looked at a group of 50 managers, we are going to find between 5 to 10 of those managers who are the exception. They're exceptional. You wish that everyone could be like David and Mary and Kate and Fred and Mark, because those are 5 people who are exceptional. All of their team love them. We know that they're getting great results in terms of whatever they deliver, but often we don't learn from what they do. So a great way in to solve this for free is to identify a group of people who are getting it right, who the people regard as great people managers. And there's a bit of a caveat here I'll come back to, and look at what they do. The caveat here is making sure that they are delivering for both groups of people, of course. They're delivering for their team, and they are, of course, delivering for the organization. We found many cases where we can have tremendously sort of what we would call people-pleasing managers who, as far as the organization are concerned, if you were the CEO, or if I was looking at it as a CEO and say, you know what, I can see that their team love them, but that whole team are not delivering what we need them to deliver. So there is a bit of a caveat here. But there are going to be people who are delivering for all these key stakeholders. What can we learn from how they best do it? And often also good to look at their senior managers and their directors of how they are managing their managers. And again, we've got a really compelling statistic on this from our research, which I'm going to share with you in a little while too. So 3 key things, I think, how do we align, how do we sell, and how do we best serve people, I think would be a really interesting thing to look at. We are going to take a very brief 30-second pause here because it's just come to me that we do have a competition we're going to run. I don't want to leave it till the end because I want to give everyone the chance to win this unbelievable prize. And as I said at the beginning, we give away a world-class manager mug as part of our process to some of these exceptional managers. And we're going to find out what's in this live streams. Oh, it's about time for an insane giveaway. And this week we're giving away a world-class manager golden mug of managerial excellence in sunshine yellow. It keeps the hot drinks hot and the cold drinks kind of warm as well. But it can only be won by one lucky winner. Wow. Exactly. So here's the question. What percentage of managers do not know the goal of the organization? What percentage of managers do not know the goal of the organization? So never let it be said that we go to like poor lengths here to put on competitions and giveaways. This is serious stuff. So you heard the question, what percentage of managers don't know the goal of the organization? I covered it a couple of messages ago. So hopefully that did stick in your mind. But if you could just share with us on the chat, and then we have Rose live on the line from our team who's going to pick a winner and announce it at some point as we continue on. Right, so back on with the live stream. There are three key things that we talked about for the organization, and there are three key things I wanted to focus on for the manager and for the individual. So let's look at this now, hyper-personal, hyper-local. This is about you, it's about me, it's about anyone in a management position in our organizations. The first thing that we talk about is how do we help, and this is what the organization often asks us, right? We want to build our manager's capability, which makes all sorts of sense. You think, oh, that sounds good. Building management capability. I like the sound of it. Sounds like it's serious and people are going to get something out of it. But of course, the goal here for the individual is really thinking about how do we build the individual's capability. Of course, to build the capability of the individual, we need to know what the capabilities are in the first place and therefore identify which ones we might want to strengthen. So some organizations will employ things like 360s. Actually, a shout out to a lady we work with called Colette Barrett, who's awesome, who does these 360 processes. And some of the things that I've picked up from the way that she works and the things that she does are great because it enables the individual to identify sort of strengths and where they might need to strengthen themselves. So we talk about building the capability of the manager. In order to do that, of course, understanding and getting people to think about their capability is key. The second big thing that we look at here is how do we help the managers to be able to deliver what we would call the outcomes. So let's be real. When we talk about growth of an organization, of any of our organizations, if we are commercial, growth often means, and although it's often a dirty word, it means selling more stuff. It means engaging more customers. It means having more people take on our services and our products. There is a key here, which when we look at the cold, hard business world of 2024, in all of the headwinds, economic headwinds that we have sort of in front of us, we know that building and growing the organization is key. So ultimately, we are as an organization going to be measured on our outcomes. And as much as we might not like it from any of the commercial organizations, that will be a financial measure. If you're a stock market listed company, as you know, you are measured and challenged on that every 12 weeks by your analysts in the market. And it's all done very much publicly. So when we think about how do we help managers deliver on these outcomes, what might some of those outcomes be? And again, we think it's really valuable. And we've seen a few examples of this, of where organizations will say, right, let's zero in on that. And how can we help these individuals to deliver like a more exceptional service delivery to the customer? Or it might be that you've got a sales team that is much more effective. Or it might be that you've got internal teams like HR, like IT, like finance, like to some degree marketing. And how do we help our internal stakeholders to feel like they are getting a better service delivery from those internal teams? We all serve someone. We're all ultimately measured on outcomes, regardless of whether it's a commercial organization or not. And often the management development programs are often at odds and adjunct from the outcomes of what we would probably want to see as the organization, which again comes into this whole idea of alignment, but I think it's much more personal than that. The way to solve this, of course, is again, at the beginning of any management development program, it might be a really good idea to engage with a wide number of managers and say, what does this look like in practice? It might be a good idea to engage with the personal development plans that are already in place and say, what could we do that would help to ace these? Assuming, of course, that those personal development plans and performance reviews are in the first instance even aligned in the first place with the organizational mission, which that was the last live stream, I think. How do we review performance reviews? You can check that one out. And then the final one here that we look at is how do we ultimately, and I think this is the big one, right? How do we help to build people's value? Ultimately, this whole idea of selling me the vision of engaging more with this process and getting involved in a learning and management development program is something that should make me or you or all of us as people managers ultimately more valuable. This is going to be one of the most important areas of why someone would want to engage. Either that this makes me more valuable internally in this organization, that might be financially, that might be remuneration wise, that might be status, that might be impact if you're a charity, but something that makes me feel like I'm more valuable in this organization. And ultimately, even though we don't like to admit it, but of course it's the reality, isn't it? That at some point people might want to leave the organization for bad reasons and for good reasons. If they should leave the organization, then this should make them worth more in the external marketplace as well. But ultimately, this comes down to helping people to really build their value. Again, one of the big areas that we look at here, which is why it probably constitutes about 25 to 30% of all of the content that we ever focus on in the World Class Manager program, is focused on what we would call the performance reviews and helping people to identify what they actually want, which sounds like, again, a very basic, naive, very simple question, which is, what do you want? You know, it's the basis of any great one-to-one and development conversation, whether that's one-to-one or one-to-many for the organization, but zeroing in on what can we do that helps you to feel like you're being made to be worth more internally or externally, ultimately building your value. As I said earlier on, there's a statistic I wanted to share with you, which is like we've never shared this one on a live stream before. And this came from listening to 15,500 managers in the World Class Manager program. And this for me was fascinating. So this is based on managers, and 63.3% of managers said that their managers do not challenge them in terms of their growth objectives and their development plans. 63.3% of managers are not challenged, have no challenge by their managers, which I thought is really fascinating. Now, is it true that 63.3% of those managers don't have an organization or work for an organization which doesn't have clarity in terms of growth objectives and all that stuff? Of course not. They all do. But 63.3% of managers tell us that there is no challenge, which tells us that the problem is not necessarily at the manager to frontline employee level. It's probably a bit more senior than that. It's in this key relationship between our managers and our more senior managers. What's happening there, and how might we improve this number? Because I would imagine if you were the CEO of any company, you'd probably want all of your people to say that actually, yeah, there is good constructive challenge about their growth development. Why? Because you pay a fortune for a lot of people all of the time, and you probably want to get the biggest return on investment you can. If it is true that people are our greatest asset, and I'm sure everyone would believe that and agree with that, then how do we maximize the return on this really important asset, i.e. people? So 3 key things for the organization, 3 key things for the individual. I wanted to try and leave enough time for some good comments and questions. So if you do have any questions, please feel free to drop them in the chat. If it's something that you're doing really well in the organization that works successfully, please feel free to drop that in. I also believe that by this point, we should have a winner announced. So if we do have a winner, please let's announce the winner of this golden mug of managerial excellence. It's a delightful thing. Look at that. And then also we can hopefully get into some questions. So the winner is, it's coming in. The winner is, drum roll, if I had one. Who we got? Ildiko. Ildiko Sturgis. Thank you very much. So he is the winner, or she is the winner. Not sure who, we've never met, but you are the winner. You are the recipient of this amazing world-class manager, golden mug of managerial excellence. So thank you very much for contributing, and we will make sure that the mug finds its way to you wherever you are in the world. And then in terms of any questions, if there are any questions or thoughts, please feel free to drop them in. We're going to be doing the next live stream in 2 weeks' time, which is probably the last one for the summer, and we'll be back in September. But we'll get to that. So William O'Connell, and I see these the same time you see them. So William O'Connell, West London. I have several managers reporting to me, and I want to help them develop and build for my succession. Well, this is great. Great. Not many managers actually, William, talk about succession planning. It used to be something we talked a lot about in companies many years ago, but not now. So I think it's great that you've got many people that are interested to want to progress into a more senior role, and then how do you help them? Now, the thing is, bearing in mind, of course, I don't know, William, I don't know how much experience you've got either in the organization you're in or as a manager. Let's assume you've got quite a lot, which is why you're talking about succession planning. There will be a tremendous amount that you've learned through the years, which I think is really impossible in a way to document. Here's one of the ways that we do it in organizations. We interview out of people often what they do that works really well. And I would find it like a good opportunity to identify someone in your organization who knows you pretty well, to be able to interview out of you what you do that works so successfully. The reason why I say that is because often what we've got is a tremendous amount of tacit knowledge which sort of sits in our subconscious. And if someone was to ask you, William, could you write down on a sheet of paper what you do that works really well? It's going to be difficult because in a way it's hard to recall all of that information. Another way to do it is to think through your entire career journey and get someone to interview out of you what some of the challenges were, what things that you've overcome, what things that you've learned, and so on. And it can be a really useful exercise to identify some of those best practice areas. The reason why I think that's important to do that is because there's a tremendous amount of organizational investment, time, energy, money, passion, emotion that's gone into helping to craft you as a manager, as you are, William. And there's a whole bunch of those things that you probably don't want to lose. The challenge here is what we would call the biggest source of waste in most organizations is often that stuff just walked out the door when people leave. So again, thank you. Brilliant quote, brilliant question in a way. And I think that this points to something that we can do really effectively, not just for, of course, for your organization, but for many organizations too. Thank you, William. And Slater Brooks, challenge is trying to help a struggling sales team when senior management is inconsistent in communication and measures. I guess this is a classic, right? This is a classic often because, and again, I don't know, again, we've never met Anne, but I would imagine often senior managers, as we see in most organizations, have a very fixed view of how the world works. And often they believe that it works in a much easier way than it really is on the ground. I mean, this is the classic back to the floor moment for the CEO. If you've ever watched Undercover Boss, you know, you will see these CEOs who have a sort of an assumption, they have a hypothesis actually of how things work in the organization. And the bigger the organizations get, often the more hypotheses that they have and the more theories they have, which are constantly changing in the real world for most of the people at the front end of the job or at the most difficult end of the organization, like people in sales roles. A really good thing to do, whether or not the leadership team or senior management would be up for it, but it could often be great to get them to do some co-working together in some of those key frontline roles to get an appreciation and re-understand what some of those challenges are like. I think this can be one of the most valuable things to do. There's a CEO we work with who has about 3,500 people across 6 or 7 countries, across 20 different physical locations in his business. And he does 4 days a year of back to the floor. He told me that he did a day working as a room cleaner in one of their hotels. I mean, it's a phenomenal story. Yes, of course, it's great for employee engagement and the team see him. But what it does is it gives him this exceptional organizational, operational knowledge. And therefore, you can design solutions that work, which I think talk to many of the things I've spoken about before. But it would be great. And I don't know if they've tried this before, but maybe you could challenge the man to get some time together with some of those frontline salespeople, do some work together. It might be like a day or so together to get them to start to understand where each other are coming from and therefore design some sort of plan of action or some sort of development program that really works for them and of course for the organization. Great quote. And Steve Layton, I know Steve Layton live on the line as well. Managers are the key to good productivity and influence team members and keep them on track with objectives. Amen, Steve. I absolutely would agree with that. They absolutely are. And I think the key when we look at, you know, where do you place your effort and energy as an organization? We know that the role of the people manager is fundamental. In all of the things that we've seen, everyone says, of course, people leave managers, not the organization. I think that's largely true. And I think there's a few caveats with that. The reason why I think it's true is often because of the personal development conversation stuff. So again, we've covered this in a previous session. I think it was a South African stream a couple of live streams ago, but we talked about how 50%, based on our understanding and our research, 50% of managers would say that they leave the organization because they don't feel grown and developed. I mean, 50% of people who leave the organization, sorry, not 50% of the organization leaves, 50% of everyone who leaves cites career growth and development as the number one reason why they left. So looking at the other way, if we were to try and stem the tide of people wanting to leave the organization, maybe a good thing to focus on would be their growth, their personal development, and so on. Why? Because of many of the things we talked about already, but of course, this makes me feel like I'm being made to be more valuable in the organization as well. So next live stream is going to be in 2 weeks on Wednesday, I think it's 31st of July, I think, which is probably going to be the last one, we'll see, of the summer, and then we'll restart in September. Again, I wanted to say a massive thank you for everyone for connecting with us, for engaging with us, for sharing some of your insights as we go through these live streams. I love doing them because it gives us an opportunity to share our insights and best practice. Hopefully you enjoy attending them, and the numbers do seem to be rising, which is a good indication, of course. I'm very much market driven. If the market wants it, we'll do it. So again, a huge thank you for engaging with us on this process. We look forward to sharing more with you on July the 31st, where we're going to get into a really interesting area, as always. But this one, we're going to zero in on the selection process. Like, how do we select great managers? I think this is going to be a bit contentious because we've got a very definite view on that. But how do we select great managers? July 31st, probably around 12 noon again, and probably another giveaway too. Thanks so much. See you soon.